Should have known better. Knew that there were going to be issues since I was messing with it. Can you shut the door? Please. Thank you.
You want to create a stunning website. I've already done.
Wait, don't leave. Sorry, Travis. I shouldn't be seeing this screen.
Create a studio in the upper right corner.
Oh, you guys, I don't know if you can see me, but if you do, just hold tight. Weird. Okay, okay, good. Oh my gosh, the drama. Thank you. Thank you. Hello. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, you can see me. Can you hear me? You guys can see me. Okay, good deal. Oh, chaos. Chaos ensues. Tanitria, Wonder Woman, Elizabeth, Jennifer, the Blue Fairy Jasmine, Donna, Postmodern. Awesome. You guys, Kevin is here. Wonderful. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Yeah, I was messing around. I switched out computers today because I was I was recording my second book onto Audible. So I was just using my computer, and I knew better, but I didn't give myself enough time to rearrange the whole studio, and we thought it was going to work and it didn't. So that's what was going on. But yes, Tanitri asked, are you feeling a lot better, Dana? Yes, I am significantly better. So thank you guys so much for all of the support. And I got a lot of emails and people checking up on me and comments and everything. I don't know what happened. I just really fell into such a bad funk last week, and but doing significantly better. And two of the things I think that really helped the most, and this might sound really strange, is vitamin D. Tremendously, I feel like that might have been a big part of it. I was really low on vitamin D. Started taking vitamin D supplements and felt better within like 2.5 days. That was really wild. And then I was doing a lot of different types of like grounding exercises, and this might sound real hippie woo woo, but like one of them I came across on YouTube, and it was like a chakra balancing thing. And so I was doing that. I was listening to that video like over and over and over again. And that made me feel so much better. And it's interesting too, because I hadn't never really like kind of looked into that kind of stuff, into chakra stuff or anything like that before. So I didn't give it a lot of credit, I guess. And it really helped tremendously. And I think the reason why it really helped is it was bringing my awareness to like different points in my body, and then focusing on kind of bringing my energy to those points, and then making them brighter, and then getting them active, and just kind of clearing out different zones in my body. It was very powerful stuff, and that's something that I think I'm going to incorporate into I was going to say daily, but we're probably not going to do it daily, at least on a regular basis, probably at least a weekly thing. It's a good thing. I was doing it, on the treadmill. I messed up my hip, like overdoing it at the gym. So I'm like walking on the treadmill and doing these kind of chakra grounding exercises. And it's powerful stuff. I like it. Yeah, Tanitra is saying, yes, I took a physical and had vitamin D checked. It can definitely put you in a state of depression. Yeah, it was weird because it was like my body must have known, because that was one of the first things that came to mind, was that I needed to start walking a lot more, and just kind of walking and thinking, like, I guess more like dedicating that time to just think. And vitamin D and vitamin B were just really on my mind. And so I finally broke down and like just went to the store and got some supplements, and that's been a huge difference. Um let's see here. People are asking about the different like chakra clearing thing. You can do, and I wish I remembered the name of the video that I did, but there's quite a few of them out there. If you do a search on YouTube for like chakra clearing, you can find a lot, and they're all really valuable. And so, kind of the whole concept behind it is that your body has different like energy meridians, and that we have 7 of them that run from kind of like the base of your spine to like the top of your head. Uh, and they're each different colors. And just visualizing in the colors of the rainbow. So it goes, let's see, red, orange, yellow, green, blue. What is it? Yeah, green. Green is the heart chakra. I remember that one. Green, blue, then I think violet, and then some people do like a fuchsia kind of one on the top of the head, or like a white light. And you can visualize these different energy centers as, for me, that started off as like maybe like the size of a golf ball or a tennis ball. And then s- for me, I don't, and everybody's going to be different. And I would probably be different too, with different, if I was doing this at like different points, depend like in the, even probably even in the day. And then imagining that color getting brighter and more vibrant, and then starting to spin it, just starting to imagine it spinning in like a clockwise direction, and then just getting brighter and more powerful. It's very interesting. And again, I think one of the reasons, because I'm not, I don't, it's kind of a little hippie woo, but I think one of the reasons it does work is it's a great way to kind of bypass that rational mind and to tune into your inner self in just a different way. Because that rational mind, if things don't compute, if we're like, that's really out there, we're very quick to dismiss it. And our body might have messages that it's trying to communicate to us that our rational brain just won't let us receive. And so it was just, I would not have expected this. It was just a very interesting experience. And so I would come across kind of visualizing certain kind of different chakras, like different energy meridians, and paying attention to like, what color are they, how bright are they moving, or are they just stagnant? And it was a kind of a great way to, I think, tune in with yourself. And each meridian is a different thing. So like, you, for example, you have the red chakra, which is at kind of the base of your spine, and that's your grounding chakra. And it grounds you. And then your orange one is kind of in your pelvis, and that's more of like, uh, I think sexuality, and a lot of emotion is stored in that one, supposedly. And then your yellow chakra is behind your solar plexus area. And let's see, green is your heart chakra, and blue is your throat chakra. So like a sky blue color is your throat chakra. Um, then you have kind of like your a deeper blue, like an indigo blue, is more of like your third eye. And then, kind of like a violet, or some people use white as kind of, it's almost like your radio signal to God or to the universe, or what have you. So interesting to see which ones are feeling more stagnant or darker, and why, and which ones are feeling more vibrant and energetic, and why. Just very interesting. Vegan Yogi asks, Dana, I'm wondering if you have a book club or blog review on The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. I don't, but I believe that I read that book a while back, and I think you actually might have been the one that recommended it a while ago. Let me make a note. Untethered Soul, Michael Singer. Lucy and I are still working on the book club list for 2018. It's mainly me. The delay is me. So I really need to get on that. I cannot believe it's almost the end of December. So I will make that a goal before the next live stream as well. Book club list. Gosh, time flies. And we can see what we can do about that. Okay, let's see here. Rick says, "Hi, Dana. I finally got to get on tonight. My borderline narcissist had an episode that is very concerning to me. And when I tried to make her mindful of it, she took it as an attack as usual." Well, yeah. And that's the thing, if any of us are not aware of certain things that we're doing and we don't want to be aware of it, or we feel justified in how we're behaving, anybody else that tries to bring that to our attention we're going to get really upset by that. And so and that's one of, I think, the biggest challenges for a lot of people is if they've got this problematic person in their life, we so desperately want to kind of wake them up and be like, hey, this is a problem. This is what's going on. And if they're not ready, willing, or able to deal with that for whatever reason, or to want to change, which it's difficult for people to change, then it's hard for us to accept that that's who they are and that's where they are, and to try to kind of give up with changing them. It's difficult. That's one of I think our biggest struggles in all of this. Let's see. Oh, Dave is here. Hey, Dave. I was just thinking about you today. Let's see. Let me scroll up here. Trista says, "Could you give me some tips for living with narcissistic parents? Both of them are very covert." And I think the biggest tip I could really give anybody is, it kind of goes back to what I was encouraging Rick to do, and that's acceptance. Now, that's not to be confused with allowance. Okay. So we can accept a person for who they are, but that doesn't mean that we need to allow that behavior to continue in our life. Accepting it just means that this is they are who they are, and they're not going to, at least at this point in the game, they're not going to change. And so because they're not going to change, then that means that we need to do something different in order to keep ourselves safe and sane. And so if you're living with two very narcissistic parents, oftentimes a lot of a person's like frustration and anger and resentment is because it's like we want things to be different, and we're tired of getting abused or used or exploited or what have you. And it's hard, I would imagine, especially with two parents that are highly narcissistic. It's hard to fully embrace that this is just who they are. But there's a lot of peace that can come from that, because once you're like, okay, this is what this living situation is, and um, then okay, then what can you do in that, and what can you do to keep yourself safe and sane? And so some of those things might be realizing that, if they're, let's say, for example, I guess anticipating what do they normally do? What if they had a pattern of doing in the past? And then anticipating that they're going to continue doing that in the future. And so let's just say, for example, if they've put you down or called you names or stolen from you, or continue to make little, snarky comments, those kinds of things, to emotionally prepare yourself as much as possible for that happening. So if and when it does happen in the future, that you're more emotionally prepared for it, and it doesn't knock you off balance as much, and it doesn't put you in such a funk. Because and then I think to also realize that their behavior is a reflection of them, it's not a reflection of you. So, in other words, to not take this personally and to not internalize it. Like, this is just who they are. And it's unfortunate and it's not right and it's not fair. And, I think there's also, too, it's worth mentioning, there's a difference between, I think, making the mental note to yourself that there's a difference between having hurt feelings and letting statements like that, if they are kind of verbally, giving put downs or saying hurtful things, that it's normal to have your feelings hurt by that, but at the same time you don't need to let that negatively impact your self-worth. You can keep those two. I would encourage you to keep those two things in two very different buckets. So if your feelings are hurt, you're not internalizing it and letting it negatively affect your self-worth. So I hope that that helps. Okay, let me. Yes. And she says, yeah, I finally started standing up for myself. Some days are easier than others. Thank you. Yes. Yes. And it's hard, especially when you've got narcissistic parents who, don't care about boundaries probably, and they just don't get it. And, having to continually reset these boundaries, it can be such an exhausting process. But um, doing kind of what you can, and whatever that might look like to you in your situation, like doing what you can to keep yourself at a place where you can stay safe and sane. That's just such a huge, huge thing. Ooh, that's a good one, Maria. Maria says, I can't believe with the three C's: chemistry, compatibility, and communication. I always thought communication was workable. Now I know boundaries are my best communication tool. I love that. I love that so much. It's so true. I mean, chemistry, and I like how you have that, the chemistry, compatibility, and communication. Like, all three of those things are very important. But if I had to pick one, I would say communication is probably the most important, because without it, the other two just become crazy making. So having that open, honest, sincere, solutions oriented communication is such a must. But it's a problem if it's only a one-way street. Like, if we're giving the other person open, honest, sincere, solution oriented communication, but they're giving us half truths, lies, manipulation, that kind of stuff, then we're just wasting our time. And I agree with you 100%. Like, healthy boundaries speak the loudest. And there's no sense trying to get another person to communicate effectively if they're not motivated to. It's just screaming into the wind. Music, fashion, and passion says, when I stood up for myself, a friend called me aggressive and a covert narcissist and ended the friendship with me. It's been almost 2 years and I'm still devastated because in my mind, I was being open. Yes, and it's very difficult, when we start setting boundaries, especially with people that are already in our lives, it can be quite the challenge, because every relationship, whether it's a friendship, a work environment, relationship, a significant other, there's a dynamic, there's like a dance that goes on between the different people involved. And if one person, if the whole, the two people are used to kind of doing the cha-cha, and one person decides to start doing the waltz, then everything kind of comes to a screeching halt. And That's very much the case within relationships. When one person starts doing a different dance, when we start developing boundaries and saying no and standing up for ourselves or bringing up issues, it often does not go over well, especially when other people, they're so, if they're used to us always saying yes and always being completely available to them at any given time, they don't know what to make of that. And so, that can feel like, oh, she's really rude, or what's wrong with her? She must be in a bad mood. They just don't understand. And uh, y- yeah, I think most people, when they get to that place where they start setting boundaries with people, what they tend to find is that kind of life, the universe, what have you, kind of pushes you out of a lot of these old relationships, and then you start making new ones. It's it's um it's just kind of you're just at a different you're just at a different place in your life, and but it can be incredibly painful to have kind of these friendships and these work situations in, or these relationships with a significant other, and especially if a person's like freshly out of a narcissistic relationship, to then all of a sudden, like, then now they're setting boundaries and being assertive and at least practicing that, and then now their friendships are kind of falling by the wayside too. It can be incredibly crazy making, but um, keep keep doing it and setting boundaries. It does take practice, and a lot of people are going to be put off by that because they might not be used to setting boundaries either, or having boundaries set. So if you keep doing it and you keep moving in a direction of kind of moving yourself towards a place where you're safe and sane and you're being assertive and these kinds of things, you will eventually start attracting and being attracted to more of like your people. So just keep moving in that direction of what's healthy. Yep, totally. Maria says, never too late, never too old, never too alone to make your life better and make your life exactly what you want it to be. Baby steps. Yes, absolutely. And Sue says, narcissistic relatives are coming for the holidays. This time I definitely will not do the cha cha, but the waltz for sure. Yes. And so this was a strategy uh, we read about, and I wish I could remember off the top of my head, but I don't, which book it was in. But it's a concept called book ending. And so I think this is a really helpful concept for the holidays, where if we're knowingly going into a stressful time, we've got these difficult people that are coming over, they're going to be there for however long, 3 hours, 3 days, 3 weeks, to really kind of figure out, okay, how can I make this as enjoyable as possible for me? Instead of just hanging on for dear life and watching the clock the whole time. Like, what can you do to make this as enjoyable for you as possible? And so the concept of book ending is kind of knowing that in the middle there's going to be this potentially very stressful event, and then on one side giving yourself as much support and kind of relaxation and affirmation and just a kind of this nourishing space. Give yourself that ahead of time, and then give yourself that afterwards. And you may even find that you want to do that multiple times in between as well. So I think one of the concepts in the book was, let's say, for example, if a person's going to be going to court and it's an incredibly stressful event and it's going to last about an hour, to anticipate that and maybe set up, if you have a therapist or you're in a support group or what have you, to see if you can maybe do something supportive and nourishing ahead of time. Like maybe you have lunch with a friend, maybe you see your therapist before that event happens, maybe you um, listen to like your favorite music and stuff on the way there. Maybe you do a lot of some journal writing. And then after the court appointment, maybe you go get a massage. Maybe you go talk to your therapist. Maybe you go spend time in your support group. Maybe you journal some more. So you're kind of really getting that emotional support in as much as possible. Tabitha asks, can hard drugs like meth cause narcissism? Uh, yes and no. So they cause substance abuse causes, I would say, like a form of narcissism. That's more of the addiction speaking. It's not the same as having like a full out personality disorder. However, there's a lot of alcoholics and addicts who are also personality disordered. And so for like a mental health clinician, what they'll generally do is they'll look at that person, how are they after they've had a certain length of clean time? Is this kind of, what are you dealing with here? Like this problematic behavior, are you dealing with the addiction? Are you dealing with mental illness? Are you dealing with the personality disorder? And it takes time to really sort all of that out. And of course, it can also be all three at once. So it's quite quite something to have to deal with. However, if a person if a person has an active addiction of any kind, especially if it's extreme like meth, you know, I really view it as it's impossible to have a relationship with a person who's an addict of any kind, because then you have three people in that relationship. It's you, them, and their addiction. And that addiction is like a Tasmanian devil that just destroys everything in its path. And if a person, is an addict or an alcoholic, like they really need to get those issues addressed and under control. And I would encourage them to really have ideally 3 to 5 years clean time before they even start thinking about getting into a relationship. In doing all of that self-care and that work, and it's a lot for anybody to deal with, to cope with, and to recover from an addiction of any kind. So yeah. And it just depends. I mean, I've been around addicts who are, um, you know, that lie and cheat and steal and manipulate when they're addicts, and they also do that when they're completely sober. So it's it's hard to tell sometimes. Just it takes time. It just takes time, and it takes a very lengthy period of clean time to actually see what you're dealing with. Sue, that's a great point. Says, I've also experienced a lot of codependence with alcohol and drug problems. They do that to numb themselves. Yes. And that's a very valid point as well. I think people in general, when they turn, there's a saying out there that we're only as healthy as our coping mechanisms. And I think there's so much truth in that, because, I think that's why people develop addictions of any kind, whether it's food, shopping, spending money, gambling, sex, heroin, alcohol, what have you. It's to cope with, it's their highest and best way of knowing how to handle that situation, kind of giving the coping methods that they have at that time. And it kind of goes back to like, once we know better, then we can do better. And because here's the weird thing about coping mechanisms is we tend to develop them fairly young, and it's not often like a conscious thing. It's just something that we kind of fall into, and we're like, "Ooh," and it's, you know, like it's just that hit of like dopamine of like, oh, that feels good. And then we just start doing it more and more and more. And then people can get so consumed in that addiction. And it's such a slippery slope. Like, it's like anything else that's problematic. Like if we don't realize, it's that slippery slope keeps becoming our new normal. And so it can be really hard for a person to realize that they have a problem, especially that's one of the biggest challenges with dealing with addiction is and then because most people, it's the whole kind of birds of a feather flock together. We all tend to like people that are like us. And so if a person, has is challenged with, alcoholism, odds are they're going to hang out with other people that drink about the same amount as them. And they're going to feel very uncomfortable around people that don't drink. If a person really, is addicted to food and they're, binge eater or what have you, odds are they're going to hang out with other people that really enjoy eating and that they feel comfortable with. They're probably not going to want to be hanging around with people that are uh, restricting their calories or dieting or actually, monitoring how much they eat, because then it makes them, because and then we all do this, right? Because it makes them self-conscious about what they're doing. Just like the alcoholic, if they drink, let's say 15 drinks a day, just throwing that number out. I mean, a lot of alcoholics drink a lot less than that, but let's say they drink 15 drinks a day. If they're around somebody else that stops at 2, they might feel very uncomfortable around that because it makes them aware of just how much they're drinking. And so it's because so then if we're surrounding ourselves with other people that are like us and how we are is deeply dysfunctional, then it can really take a lot for for it to register that this is indeed a problem. And so this is one of the things that they talk about in AA and NA and Al-Anon and groups like that, is letting the alcoholic or the addict hit rock bottom, because they need that wake up call of what they're doing isn't working. And sometimes that might mean that they need to go, they need to go to jail. They need to pay the fines. They need to get fired from their job. They need to have their marriage end. Like they need to have these massive consequences for it to register that no, this isn't us trying to be mean to you or control you, or we're not being, you know, like stuck up or prude or what have you, or making a big deal out of nothing. Like you really do have an issue. And so that's a big challenge. But yes, a lot of codependent people too struggle with addiction because it's one of those things. Like if a person, for a lot of codependent people, they just don't realize that leaving is an option. They're very emotionally invested in a relationship, and for them it's like, I'm going to make this work at all cost. And if they're tangled up with an emotional manipulator who's lying and cheating and stealing and doing all of these things, and they're blaming their partner, and it's so crazy, making them, the partner's thinking it's them, and they're twisting themselves into this emotional pretzel trying to make this relationship work. And the reality is, it's like, we didn't cause the abuse, we can't stop the abuse. Like, it's the abuser is the one with the problem, it's not us. Like, the abuse is not our fault. And so um because if they're feeling like they can't go through life without this person for whatever reason, and there's lots of different reasons, uh then they're like, okay, well, if I'm not going to leave, then I've got to figure out a way to stay. And then oftentimes that way to stay is to completely numb out. So addiction is a very big thing. It was one of the bigger challenges that we had when I was working at a domestic violence shelter. Vegan Yogi asks, oh, actually, real quick. Thank you. Who was that? Nathan. Thank you, Nathan, for the live stream donation. I appreciate it. Vegan Yogi asks, what are some healthy coping mechanisms like meditating and clearing of chakras and yoga? Yeah, it's, I guess the way that I look at healthy coping mechanisms is it something that's nourishing you in the long run? Because and how do you feel like the next day or an hour after you're doing this? I think that can be a good kind of gauge to figure out if how nourishing something is for you. Because a lot of addiction kind of stuff, like unhealthy coping mechanisms, can feel really good in the moment. So there's kind of that short-term gratification, but there's that long-term consequence. So we might feel really great in the moment eating that cheesecake, or that spending that money or having that drink or what have you, but we can tell that this is not for us, because how we feel later on is often accompanied by shame, guilt, self-loathing, we're hiding what we're doing. I think that can be a really great way to tell if you're coping, how healthy or unhealthy are your coping mechanisms. Are you hiding what you're doing? Are you hiding how much you're spending or drinking or eating? Um, are you lying about what you're doing? And to be really honest with yourself, it can be very insightful to see, like, okay, where is this coming from, and what's this about, and this maybe is something kind of worth diving into, because most things in life, there's more than just the surface layer to it. you know there's oftentimes like things are like 3 layers deep, and it often boils down to us avoiding pain at some sort of level, like us trying to protect ourselves. So, like long term, healthier coping, different types of coping mechanisms. Uh, I guess I look at it as two of kind of like transmuting that tension or that anxiety or stress into something positive. So maybe working towards like getting organized, going for a walk, playing with a child or an animal, or uh, sometimes volunteering, going and spending time at like a nursing home. uh, Cooking can be very healing. Preparing yourself a really nice, nourishing meal, taking time out and watching a movie that makes you feel good, um, reading a good book, really. And I think that's a challenge that so many of us have, is really getting in tune with what makes you feel good. I think for a lot of people, they don't even know. They're so, especially those that have gone through narcissistic abuse of any kind, and they've been so used to kind of living their life for somebody else, that they don't, a lot of that is part of the challenge with healing, is trying to figure out what do I want, and what do I need, and how do I feel, and what's going on, and kind of regathering the pieces of yourself. So it can be quite a challenge, but I think that's a good place to start, and is getting in tune with, what do you want, like what makes you feel good, and to follow that. Like it's okay to take time and to read a book, or to you know to go for a walk, or to take some time to play with your dog, or what have you. uh let's see, let me Oh, yeah, I agree, Dandelion. Dandelion says the whole psychopathic, narcissistic abuse experience has been the best and worst thing that's ever happened to me in terms of growth and understanding. So terrible, but so valuable. Yes, I think I feel the exact same way in my situation as well. And I think, it's very similar, kind of what we were talking about with addicts or alcoholics. There is that rock bottom point that causes a person such tremendous amounts of pain that they something's got to give, you know and if they can hit that rock bottom and then use that as like a trampoline to then bounce back up and then start rebuilding their life, and kind of going through all of that, like that process of like self kind of introspection, and um, all of that, because like it can be so powerful, but it can be so scary too, because when a person hits rock bottom, they oftentimes feel incredibly broken, like nothing good can come from this. But if you ask really any alcoholic or addict, they would say the same thing. It was that rock bottom moment that that was their wake up call, and that radically just altered the course of their life. And unfortunately, it's like again, like addiction and alcoholism and abuse, is it oftentimes takes a person several times of going through the same pattern before they're able to effectively kind of break that cycle. And I think for so many of us, especially when it comes to abuse, it's not so cut and dry. So, like with an alcoholic, it's like, okay, you have this one thing that you need to do, like you need to quit drinking alcohol. So it's a lot easier to kind of connect that cause and effect, like alcohol equals a problem for me, right? Or if it's an addict, you need to quit the drug. The drug is the problem. But for victims of abuse, especially if you keep finding yourself in the same relationship, kind of a, different person or same person, different name, it can be really difficult to figure out, what am I doing wrong? And so what a lot of people end up doing is they're like, then I just going to quit relationships because relationships cause me pain. And I get that, and there's no judgment if a person ends up doing that, because it's a lot to continue having to go through. But what it really is, what's causing that person pain, is it's problematic people and being out of tune with kind of their inner wisdom and that inner voice that's trying so desperately to get through to them. And again, this stuff isn't taught. So I really strongly feel that anybody can get caught up in this. It's a person really would need to learn how to pay attention to that inner voice and their gut instincts, and understand healthy boundaries and what it means to be assertive, and how it feels when something's off, and that it's okay to leave if something's, perpetually confusing or crazy making or controlling. Like, you don't need to wait until things get really bad that you can no longer hang on. But again, like, it's so easy for people to get caught up in this because nobody really talks about this stuff, and people think, oh, commitment's forever, and I love this person, and love is enough to make things work. And they said that they're sorry, so I feel like I need to keep giving them chances if they apologize, and it just keeps that person lost in the fog you know but yes, it can be an absolute turning point in a person's life. And there's a ton of personal growth that can come from this. Kendra says, I'm empathetic and codependent. The inner girl in me always wanted to be loved by somebody. So she just gives and never receives. Yeah, I think that's a very common thread through a lot of us that have experienced this, male or female, is kind of like walking around through life feeling unloved or unimportant, and then getting caught up in all of that love bombing, where all of a sudden now we're like the center of a narcissist or a sociopath's attention, and it feels so amazing. Like it makes us feel so loved and so important. And it feels like we've met our soulmate, because we seem to have this amazing connection. But then things slowly start to turn, and next thing we know, we're giving, 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 and they're taking, taking, taking. And a person can give until they just have nothing left. I mean, if you look at pictures of people when, before, during, and after an abusive relationship, they age tremendously. But the good news is, and it's interesting too, is how quickly they're able to reverse that once they're out of that situation. It just takes years off of a person when they get out, and they basically quit drinking that poison. They're able to be and able to have peace in their life. And I also just wanted to add, for people that are in uh, an abusive relationship of any kind, and if you're living at home with an abusive parent, or you have an abusive spouse, or what have you, and you're feeling trapped. You're trapped by finances, trapped by location, trapped by culture or religion or what have you, to really focus on, okay, well, what do you have control over? because sometimes it's not as simple as just leaving, you know? So uh, to make your peace in your life a priority. And so maybe that means carving out, ideally, I would encourage you to carve out as much as you can, as much time as you can to get that peace back in your life. Even if it's only in 10 or 15 increments, 10 or 15-minute increments throughout the day. You know, taking time, there's a ton of relaxation type guided imagery things on YouTube, all different links. Those can be great to listen to before you go to bed, great to listen to if you're on a break at work or during lunch, or, affirmations first thing in the morning. If you can just, any little piece that you can start carving out in your life, it's seriously such a gift that you can give to yourself. Okay, let me see here. Yeah, Kendra was saying, yes, reading and educating myself about narcissism helped me learn about me also. Yes. Yes. And that's a stage that for most people is kind of a few steps out with, down the road of healing, I'll say. So, the first kind of step when a person first gets out of a relationship like this, they oftentimes feel dazed and confused. It's like being in a hit and run accident. They don't know what happened. They just know that they're emotionally devastated, and they don't know who was to blame. They don't know, they feel like they're to blame. They kind of feel like they might have lost the best thing that's ever happened to them. They're just very confused as to what all happened. And, or they're feeling incredibly angry and victimized. Like it was exploited and manipulated, and now I'm incredibly angry. So I think the two most common emotions when a person is fresh out is anger or numbness. And a lot of people all kind of alternate between the two. So they might feel numb for quite a while, and then that numbness gradually moves into anger, or they might feel incredibly angry, and then that anger moves into numbness. And then if they're fortunate enough to come across the concept of narcissism or sociopathy or psychopathy, then a lot of things start making sense. They might hear words like gaslighting or projection or love bombing or flying monkeys, or things like that, scapegoat or smear campaign. And they're like, oh, that's weird. Like, that's what's going on with me. And so then they kind of start piecing things together. And then it's very common for a person to become very obsessive about trying to understand narcissism because they're trying to understand what happened to them. And that's it's tends to be very crazy making for other people around us because they don't understand. Even a lot of doctors or therapists or other people, if they've never had this happen, it can just be very difficult to understand, why is this person going through this? Because in their mind, a lot of people just don't understand emotional and psychological abuse if they haven't lived it. And so for them, it's sort of like, well, it was a bad breakup, and you just need to kind of move forward, but they just don't understand. So um, that's kind of more of almost like an isolating time where a lot of people tend to, they feel incredibly re-victimized by people because other people are like, oh, you need to forgive, you need to move on, you need to get over it, you need to quit doing all this. And then if they weren't isolating before, then they definitely are now. This is also kind of during, I would say that this is like the first 6 months of a person getting out of a relationship. So it's kind of anger, isolation, numbness, oftentimes a lot of trouble with sleep, generally not sleeping, nightmares, a lot of kind of, very kind of PTSD type symptoms happen. And that's normal after any trauma, whether it's a car accident, a death of a relationship, getting out of an abusive relationship, um, no matter who ends it. Um, So a lot of this stuff is very normal. It's just your brain's way of processing it. But then kind of down the road, so a person tends to stay in that kind of researching phase for a while, and they might, myself included, I think a lot of people tend to feel very re-victimized when even the concept of codependency or um, anything like that is even brought up, because it's sort of like, I was just manipulated. How on earth would I have ever known that? I don't feel like that I was codependent. I feel like I was manipulated. And um, so, and in my situation, I really feel like that at least those two relationships that brought me to this point, like researching all of this, I don't feel like that those were necessarily codependent relationships. I feel like I was flat out manipulated. But that's not to say that I didn't, there was, I had a lot of really unhealthy, one-sided, kind of more the codependent type dynamics in previous relationships, and with friendships more so than anything, which is maybe kind of strange. So there's still a lot that a person can, I think, learn from the concepts of codependency, even if they don't identify as that being an issue in their life. There's still like so much, with boundaries and your inner child and your inner wisdom and all of this, that a person can just like squeeze out from this and make it work for you. But yeah, I think getting to that place where we can start examining our own stuff is really where the power shift happens, and where your life, the personal growth really starts to happen. I did a video series, or at least I started a video series a while back on, I think it's called Red Flags of Codependency. And it's, I talk a lot about kind of how, well, kind of what is codependency, some common definitions, because it's one of those terms that's kind of nebulous. It's grown a lot over the years. And depending on who you ask, you're going to get a different answer. It's not in the DSM. So it's not a, it doesn't really have an up-to-date definition, I guess is why it's so nebulous. So anyway, so that video series covers a lot of that, and it covers uh, a lot of my own kind of experiences with that, and then insights and aha moments that I gained. And I think it's just helpful to hear other people's experiences with that. It's so much easier to see stuff in other people than it is ourselves. And so I talk about that, because I think a lot of us tend to be caregivers. We tend to be nurses or teachers, social workers, therapists, people that are kind of hardwired to care for other people. We're the ones that tend to get tangled up with these types of relationships over and over and over again. And one of the common thread between a lot of those professions is that high degree of empathy that we have. And because we've also always been this way, it can be very difficult for us to see how could this possibly be a problem, and because a lot of these traits they seem like really good. I mean, it seems like it's a really good trait to be compassionate and forgiving and empathetic and understanding and kind and considerate. And especially if we've kind of built up our whole life and our whole career around this, and we're like, man, I am really good at what I do, and I love being able to help people and to relate to people and to do all of this. There's nothing wrong with me. It's 100% them. And then kind of realizing, oh my goodness, I didn't even realize that I really didn't have boundaries. I thought that I kind of did, but I didn't realize that I, tended to have a lot of these like one-sided relationships. And I say this because I have found that we all tend to have very similar aha moments. So it can be a very huge aha moment when it's like, okay, wait a minute. We've been doing this kind of one-sided dynamic with our friendships, with coworkers, with significant others, thinking that it was a good thing and not realizing that it needed to be a two-way street, or that there was such a thing as that we could and should walk away from relationships that were draining to us, because so many of us feel like No, we want to help everybody. Everybody can be saved. Our love can save them. If we can just be, we tend to think that we can get through to them. Like if anybody can get through to them, it's going to be us. And that way, the way that we're going to get through to them is we're just going to love them and be understanding and compassionate and continue giving them multiple chances. We will never let them go because they need us. And, you know, the reality is they don't need us. They just need to use somebody. So, sorry, that was kind of a long-winded thing, but yes, I agree. That's where the personal growth happens. Uh, yes, Elizabeth totally says exactly. I knew how to deal with disrespectful teenagers as a teacher, but I could not imagine my boyfriend was still a teenager or a toddler deep down. Yes, and so that's another great point is you know, a lot of people, you just think that if you're dating somebody who, let's say, is 40, that they're going to have the emotional maturity of a 40-year-old. It's just a very foreign concept to fully realize that there can be different maturity levels, that it's not just children that can be either mature or immature, but that it's adults too. And that you could be dating a 40-year-old person, but mentally they have the emotional maturity of like a 6-year-old. And it's just so, it's hard to reconcile. Like, how can this possibly be? This person has no communication skills. They lie, and they're lying about things that don't matter. And it's things that are like they're a terrible liar too. Like they lie like a 6-year-old where they think that they're fooling you, but they're not. It's just bizarre when you encounter that kind of stuff. And then to think, because if a it's hard for us, for normal decent people, to try to develop the mindset or even understand the mindset of somebody who is the opposite, who's kind of, deceitful and destructive. Because for us, it's like, man, it takes so much energy just to live life and like a good decent life. I can't, it's just exhausting to think about how on earth do you have time? Like you have children and you have like, you're cheating on your wife and you've got 4 girlfriends and you're embezzling funds and you're just so wrapped up in craziness. Like, how do you find the energy and the time to do all of this? Like, why can't you just be on the level? And don't you just want to be happy? Like, it's such a foreign thing. Like, why somebody would create all of this chaos in their life. So strange. Agatha, welcome. I'm glad you were able to make it. Says, I just lost the comment. Hold on. I think, what did she say? I think this is going to make us stronger. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So there is a psychological term called resiliency. And it's basically exactly what you're saying. So it's kind of developing that level of resiliency for when we go through hard times, because life is about hard times. We're going to have hard times in life. And frankly, if we didn't have hard times in life, then we weren't really living life, you know? So I almost feel bad for a person who doesn't have any hard times, where everything is just gone perfect for them, because at some point in their life, they're going to experience tremendous amounts of pain and they're not going to have the skill set to handle that. So, if we can view these challenges in life as, we might feel broken, we might be really hitting that rock bottom of like emotional pain, but we can make that conscious decision of, okay, are we going to are we going to bend or are we going to break? And it might not feel like you have a choice. It might feel like, no, I'm pretty sure I'm broken. Like, I am just out of commission. I am no good. I don't have the strength or the energy to carry on. It's just my life is done. It might feel like that. And that's also very normal. But I would encourage you to set that mindset of growth. Life is about growth. Life is not about getting what we want. That's a big important shift. That's can be a very big wake up call for a lot of people. We tend to go through life thinking that even though we were raised knowing that life's not fair, I think it's still at some level we think that it is. That if we're good to other people, that they're going to be good to us. If we get good grades in school, that we'll get a good job. That if we're an honest person, that good things will happen to us. And sometimes that happens and sometimes it doesn't. And life is always about growth. It's not about getting what you want. And so if we can let go of this idea of kind of that that's what life is, that life is getting what we want, that life is going to give us all of these experiences that we can choose what to do with them and that we can choose to grow through them, then that's incredibly powerful. There's just so much, there's seriously so many uh, amazing lessons in all of this that are cloaked in so much pain. But the more you can squeeze out of this and make this work for you in every single way possible, the more you can really catapult yourself to that next level. Because another big thing too is the beauty in all of this is that there's so much energy in intense emotion of anger, rage, especially there, man, harness that. If you can harness that. And again, this is just a conscious decision. You don't even need to necessarily know how to make that happen, but just set that as your intention of I'm going to use this for my highest and greatest good. Period. End of story. Set that intention. Your brain is going to start chewing on that and it's going to start coming up with ideas of how you can make that happen. And so you can take all of that energy that's in that rage, and I kind of view it as like transmuting that energy. So you've got all of this rage and this darkness and anger, and it can be really scary. You can take that and you can become like this emotional alchemist, or then you transmute it into something positive. Whether that's, you write a book, you really get organized, you start going to the gym, you start volunteering, you garden, you paint your house, like whatever, all of the above. Like you do all of these things to get that energy, to get it out of your system, but get it out in a positive, constructive way. It's a game changer. Oh, a Missouri cowboy says, I had a horse I named Hit and Run and a dog I named Dazed and Confused. LOL. You're such a riot. One of these days, I feel like I need to go to Missouri and experience all of this firsthand. Oh, you are so welcome, James. And thank you too for your comment. I saw that the other day too. He says, Dana, thank you so much for doing a live stream every Wednesday. It helps so many people. You rock. And then Robert says, this is very helpful info. Thank you. Thumbs up. You are so welcome. And, it's, I think the biggest thing that excites me, what really keeps me doing these live streams that just really juices me is seeing people find themselves, like rediscovering who you are, and then coming alive. Like so many of us, we get so caught up in this, like living this life of should, that, oh, I should have this type of job. I should make so much money. I should have, 2.5 kids and I should. And we just should all over ourselves. Right. And the next thing we know, we kind of wake up, whether it's through a really painful relationship, or we hit, a birthday that ends in a 5 or a 0, or we get laid off, or we retire, or some major life, we have a baby, some major life change happens, and it's this moment of, what am I doing with my life? Who am I? And that's that. It's like the Matrix. Like, you just take that pill and you start discovering things that you just never knew were there. And so much of this life that we were living was just an illusion. And reality can be incredibly painful, but man, it will set you free. And then once it does, and you start figuring out, okay, who am I really? Before my father or my mother or my teachers or my culture or my religion or whoever started telling me what I should be, like, who am I? And that's kind of where that whole concept of the inner child comes into play, is really getting back in tune with kind of our inner child, like that inner, that inner 8-year-old inside of you. What did that 8-year-old version of you like, and why? Did that 8-year-old was, super jazzed about Legos, or uh, were you fascinated by cars, or um, building, or um, gardening, playing in the dirt, or gymnastics, or drawing, or kind of what really juiced you, and what still juices you. So I think really just kind of getting in tune with that. And you can tell, based on how, a lot of it's based on how you feel. So if something really juices you, like, that's the beauty of children, is I think they oftentimes remind us of who we're supposed to be, because they don't have those feelings of, at least before they're a certain age, they don't really have those feelings of shame, or um, feeling like they should be something other than they are. Like, I get the biggest kick out of little kids. They'll just come to you and they're like, yes, I am going to wear my Spider-Man costume to school. And it's like, yeah, or to the grocery store. And they just live in such the zone. Like, they just live in the zone all the time. And it's so cool, like, well, why not? Why not? But we can embrace that kind of stuff too, later on in life. Like, here's an example. My brother, who is 38, when he was a kid, oh my gosh, he was, you know, super into Spider-Man and Superman, and had the whole, Underoos things, and would run around, and he just loved that. And he would draw comic book characters nonstop, and he was so good at it. And he was really, unfortunately, talked out of that. Um, and he had so much talent too, which is really, really crazy. But it was just seen as like, well, you'd never artists don't make money, so that's not a valid career choice for you, so just quit doing this now. But he loved comic books, he collected them, he was into cartoons, like, he just loved comic stuff. And it's funny, because fast forward to today, now he's a personal trainer, and a lot of his workouts that he puts together are these different, like, after different comic book things. So he has all these different moves that he does, like the Spider-Man, which is, I don't know, like, strengthens your core. And I think sometimes he still dresses up. Like, he just brings that level of fun and play into his life today. And it's just cool, because, not too many 38-year-old guys would do that. But I guess the point is to figure out what that would be for you. Oh, that I like that too. Siobhan says, yes, I found myself again by spending some time alone and figuring out what I like to do without anyone else watching. Totally. I love that. Yeah. Getting rid of that critic, of, yeah, what do you really enjoy? And sometimes that critic can come from us, of feeling like it's a guilty pleasure, to read, or to make jewelry, or to, do whatever. So I like that. I like that suggestion a lot. Yes, Debbie, I agree completely. Debbie says, my new life started with an idea, and once I started writing, I couldn't stop. It doesn't take money or support. I was poor for 3 years. It just takes guts and an idea. Yep. Yep. So true. And Missouri Cowboy says, so much I think I want. Wow. Things others programmed me to do for them. You. Yes. And it's so, I mean, it really is. It's just like peeling back all of these layers where, w- like, where did this, it's just interesting to think about, like, where did these certain things come from, and yeah, to think about, did we outgrow this like a while ago? And is this something that you're still interested in now? And who do you want to be? And realizing that you are the author of this book that you call your life. And you can decide what you want each chapter to be about and how long or how short you want each chapter to be. And that you can start a different chapter at any given time. There's so much power in that. So to ask yourself, like, well, who do I want to be in this next chapter, and what do I want this next chapter to include or to not include? So I was listening to it was a podcast earlier today, and this gal was talking about setting goals for or New Year's resolutions for 2018. And I one of the things that she said that I really liked is she had said, instead of thinking about goals or resolutions in terms of specifics, like stuff or even like milestones. If I were to set the intention of I really want to publish 2 books in 2018, or I want to learn to speak Italian, or what have you, instead of thinking so much about the thing, to think about your goals in terms of how do I want to feel? Because that's really what we're going for. We tend to want stuff based on the feeling that we think it'll give us. So if you ask yourself, okay, well, how do I want to feel in 2018? And then I think kind of staying open to that possibility of, because that feeling can manifest in many different ways. So if you were to move more towards the feeling of like connectedness, or having more peace in your life, or fun, it might not be that specific thing of like learning Italian, but you might be able to get those emotional needs met in a variety of ways. So, and then to ask your inner self on a regular basis, okay, if the goal is to move more towards fun or peace, what might that look like today? And maybe, if it's a Wednesday afternoon and like you're going to work and what have you, maybe that means listening to like your favorite podcast on your way to work and on your way home. And or maybe it's um taking some time to listen to a comedy show during lunch, or maybe it's reading for 15 minutes. Or do you see what I'm saying? So like there's so many different ways that we can start getting those emotional needs met on a more regular basis, instead of setting these really lofty goals of, oh, I'm going to write a book. Or because what more often than not, what tends to happen is that's just a different way of kind of this problematic thinking. It's of, well, I'll be happy when. And that's, and life is really a journey. It's not a destination. Because I will tell you, after writing 2 books, checking that off the list of like writing that book, it's a very short lived celebration. I mean, I'm talking like less than a day, maybe even less than an hour. You kind of high five yourself and maybe have a glass of wine, and then like, like, okay, well, then now what? Versus having those moments of trying to enjoy the journey. Because there's a saying out there, there is no enjoyable destination without an enjoyable journey. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. So to ask yourself, what would you like to feel more of in 2018? So, oh, hello. Okay. Missouri Cowboy, thank you so much for the live stream donation. Says, happy holidays. Give yourself the gift you really want this holiday season. Self care is excellent. Thank you so much. And I will. And I agree. Self care is where it's at. And Agatha, also thank you for the live stream donation. Says, I had to heal on my own without knowing what I was healing from. I'm so glad people have you. It took me way longer than it should. Thank you so much for helping others. You are so welcome. And uh, that's one of the main reasons I do this, because I went through it too. And I was out of commission for like 6 years. I mean, it took me quite a while to figure out what was wrong. I thought it was just me. And I kind of accidentally stumbled into, I seriously don't even know how. I don't even remember how. I stumbled into some support group on Facebook, and it was just like connecting the dots. I mean, everything started to make sense. Um, and then like a few years or so after that, I started doing all this because yeah, because it shouldn't take, people shouldn't have to be stumbling around in the fog. There needs to be more resources and help and awareness about this stuff out there. Oh my gosh. Tammy says, if anyone needs to get some aggression out, try axe throwing. It was so much fun. Oh my goodness. I bet that would be. I don't know if my brother and I were just joking about this or if this is a real place. It should totally be a real place if it's not already. But to have uh like a place like a junkyard where you have just stuff that you can smash with a baseball bat, like a rage clinic. Like you can just get all that stuff out, because it feels so good to just scream and smash stuff and just get that stuff out. I think we'd all be I'd probably be a less violent society if we could get the stuff out on a more regular basis. Oh, thank you, James, for the live stream donation. It says, Dana, treat yourself. You deserved it. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Vegan Yogi says, yes, smashing mason jars. Yes. Benjamin says, that's an excellent idea. I know, right? That's got to be a thing. If it's not a thing, we need to start that. I think that would be so much fun. Somebody started a business, and I forget where it's at, where you can rent like construction equipment and like rent a bulldozer and like just move stuff around, and like the digger thing, I don't know, there's a name, the digger thing, the backhoe, I think is the name, and all this different construction equipment. And I think and obviously I'm not the only one, I think that would be so much fun to just tool around on like large equipment like that. And they do really well, and like lots of people go there and they play. It's like a giant sand lot for adults. Fantastic idea. Truth Seeker says, seriously, we need an anger clinic for expression. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, so many people, Benjamin is all for this idea. He says, I totally love the idea of it, smashing stuff. Daniel says, there's a few people that I'd smash with a bat if it was legal. Yes, I hear you. And I think a lot of people feel the same way. And I think that's what could be so therapeutic with a place that it was constructive, where you could actually get angry, and just let loose. I mean, you could make a little scarecrow person, or if they had scarecrow people, that you could just unleash that rage in a more constructive way. I like the idea of breaking plates, just breaking stuff, without the judgment. I think we could call it the Rage Cafe, and we could have tea and things to smash. I think that would be like a fantastic place. Okay, let's see. Oh gosh, Carol says towel strangling helps me. LOL. Yeah, hitting a pillow, yelling, getting that out, I think is a big thing. I used to go in my car and I'd have the windows up and I would just go to like the park in the parking lot and just scream. And that helped a lot to just get that out. It reminds me a lot of the dog whisperer and how he would go about training dogs. And his whole thing is he would run, especially puppies and like high energy dogs, is he would go rollerblading and he would run them around for, a mile, 3 miles until they burned off all of that energy. And then he would start working towards training them and getting them to focus. And I think there's a lot to that. It's really hard for a person to focus on anything, to focus in general, let alone to be constructive if they've got all of this pent up energy within them. Like you just kind of need to go run that out and then regroup and focus, and you're going to be much more effective. Oh, that's fun. I like that. Is Music, Fashion, and Passion says throwing water balloons at a brick wall feels great too. Oh, I like that a lot. That would be super fun, actually. Kevin asks, is it narcissistic for someone to invalidate your feelings when you confront them about something that makes you feel uncomfortable? I think in the broadest sense of the word, yes. So a lot of people, most people in general don't like criticism, and they don't like being told no, and they don't like confrontation. And so it's not just narcissists that don't handle that well, but even if it's like a, quote unquote normal person, might handle that. If we're feeling, I think, I guess kind of what it boils down to, if a person's feeling attacked and they go into self-defense mode, even if it's not founded, like even if you're just like, hey, I'm just bringing this up, if they're really being deflective and they're minimizing, they're justifying, they're denying, they're blaming, they're doing all of these things, they've gone into self-defense mode. And it's like they are being incredibly narcissistic because it's all about them and they're not concerned at all about you or your feelings. And when a person's in that like self-defense mode, they're not empathetic and they feel entitled and justified to treat a person how they're going to treat them. So I guess what I'm saying is most narcissists act like that, but not all people that act like that are necessarily narcissists. But it's still a problem, no matter who's doing it. There's that saying, kind of when giving a person criticism of any kind, to do it as like a sandwich. You probably heard this technique or had this done on you at work, where they'll do like a compliment, kind of constructive criticism, and then another compliment. And that's why, because if a person just kind of comes right out of the gate with constructive criticism, even if it's constructive criticism, um, but especially criticism, most people just tend to shut down and they go into defense mode. It's just kind of how we are all wired. Stacy says, well, what about if you say how you feel You're feeling hurt by them and they say you shouldn't feel that way. Uh yeah, I mean, I think that shows a level or a lack of like emotional maturity. Again, like a lot of people have that. It's still a problem. It's definitely worth, you know, like doing something. Like to me, that's not workable. Like I need that kind of goes back to that open, honest, sincere, solutions oriented communication. And part of that is if I'm telling a person that hurt my feelings or I have a problem with that, for them to not minimize what I'm saying or to argue with it or to tell me I shouldn't feel that way. Like I feel how I feel. And so now let's work towards a solution, especially if it's, it's very common for like emotional abusers to be like quote unquote brutally honest and then be like, well, I don't know, I'm sorry if that hurt your feelings, like I don't know, you just can't accept the truth or what have you. And it's but the reality is like they couldn't handle that either, because brutal honesty like that, like no, it's really it's off, well, especially with an abusive person, oftentimes it's not even valid. It's just like the reality is we're not inside this box that they think that we should be in. You're showing individuality and they don't like that. But um, a lot of times they'll just do whatever they do, and then they get mad if you don't agree with them. And it's really impossible to have a relationship with somebody if you can't bring anything up ever. And if you do, it's they deny it, they argue it, there's not trying to work towards a solution. They just kind of hold their ground, no matter how insane their ground might be. They're, being violent, they're verbally abusive, they're cheating, they're manipulating, they're stealing. To them, they've always got a valid reason for it, even though they don't. And they just have a warped sense of reality. I mean, there's just not a lot of working with that. Stacy says, I'm going to meet with him face to face soon before Christmas. I worked out what I'm going to say with a therapist. And yeah, he doesn't have accountability for his actions. So that's the thing, because the first stage in change is awareness. And so if a person doesn't have awareness that there's a problem, then you might as well just save your breath, because then you're going to be screaming into the wind. It's just like dealing with an alcoholic. They could have 6 DUIs, they could be divorced, they could be sitting in jail. If they're not aware that their drinking is a problem, even though it's a very obvious problem, they're not going to be motivated to change. A person has to be fully aware that yes, indeed, this is a problem. And it's very difficult for any of us to sit in awareness that there is a problem for any length of time, because it's sitting in pain. What we're doing, whatever it is we're doing, alcohol, drugs, eating, spending money, abusing, what have you, that's some sort of coping mechanism that's kind of deep rooted. And so with abusive people, especially, trying, because it's not even their behavior, it's the mindset that's driving their behavior. The abuse is the result. The abuse is not the problem, it's a symptom of the problem. The problem is their mindset. And until they are willing to actually work on that, which again, it's even if they were willing to work on it, it would seriously probably take decades of therapy, weekly therapy, sincere and honest therapy with a skilled therapist who fully really understands abuse, in order for them to change. Because our personalities, I kind of, again, like with alcohol, it's that you've got the one thing that's the challenge, is the alcohol. With an abusive person, that mindset, it's pervasive and it's persistent, and it's in every single thing that they do, because it's a mindset. And it's incredibly difficult for a person to change that mindset. Just like the flip side of that coin, for us, we have to develop a different mindset of kind of examining, well, what behaviors do we have that are problematic, and developing boundaries, developing, getting in tune with our inner guidance, and just the setting boundaries things takes people years before they even start to have like a solid footing in it. It's an ongoing daily process. And one of the reasons that people that are more on that codependent side can change is because we do experience a high degree of pain with all of with our actions oftentimes, because we tend to be too nice, too giving, too forgiving, too compassionate, and we get really hurt. And so the more we tune into that, and we're like, man, I really thought I was doing the right thing by letting my uncle, who was a heroin addict, move in with me, and now he stole all my stuff and blah blah. Like, it takes us a while to slow down, because for so many of us it's this knee jerk reaction to want to jump to help other people, and then to just be there and try to solve problems through kind of being there unconditionally for them. And so it takes us a while. It makes us feel guilty and bad and rude and mean and all of these things, saying no and setting boundaries and not hurting ourselves. And it takes us many, many years before we have like a real solid grasp on how to do this, to where it's not something that we consciously think about. I mean, I still have conversations with people. I mean, like, I feel like I am, neck deep in this stuff day in and day out. And I still come across situations on a regular, very regular basis where I'm like, man, that's so wild. Why did I handle it like that? Or I can't believe I did that. Or it's still difficult to say no, or to let a person know, like, to set that boundary. So I think if you can see it in that way, because again, like, it's so hard for a person who's not abusive to understand, like, I just don't understand, like, why can't they just not be abusive? It's sort of like a person who's not an alcoholic. Like, to a person who doesn't struggle with alcohol, they're like, I don't see the big deal, like, just quit drinking. Or if they don't struggle with food, they're like, I don't get it. Like, what's your problem? Like, to an anorexic person, what's your problem? You just need a good cheeseburger, right? And it's that's so oversimplifying the issue. It's so much deeper and deeply rooted in a person than just, eating a cheeseburger or not drinking or what have you. Oh, okay. Yes. DBT, postmodern is talking about. I did years of DBT and now know enough to teach it. Yes, DBT is fantastic. It's one of those therapies. It's all about kind of emotional regulation, and it's fantastic. I After we start the Rage Cafe, then I think we should start teaching DBT worldwide, starting in like kindergarten, because I think that's where the answers are, is getting people, starting with like, young people, in tune with their emotions. And how do you handle stuff like this? How do you handle anger and rage and sadness, and learning about kind of this wide range of emotions, and kind of the constructive and destructive forces, and handling life events, and just all of that is mindfulness. All of that is just so powerful. Powerful stuff. Yes, Agatha, yes, says yes, it should be a life skill. Absolutely. I tell you. Um, Phil asks, why does it take so much out of you to stand up to a narc? Are you asking like me specifically, or like just in general? Uh, so I'll wait for your answer, but I'm going to answer while I'm waiting for you to answer, or for you to clarify. for me personally, I think it's because I get knocked off balance. And when I tend to get knocked off balance, when somebody does something that's like just outrageous or inappropriate, I tend to freeze. Like that tends to be like my default response. And I can't in that moment think of what to say. And so one of the things that I've learned to and so what I do tend to say is I tend to go along with what they want me to go along with. And I have been in a handful of like really awful situations because of that. Um, and then I felt tremendous amounts of like guilt and shame for letting things happen that I didn't want to happen, but I didn't, at the time, I didn't know how else to handle it. And so one of the things that I try to do now is if I'm feeling if I'm feeling knocked off balance, especially, if it's a lot easier if you're not feeling like you're in danger. Um, if you're feeling knocked off balance, to give yourself some time and to think about kind of some default answers of, let me get back to you on that. Or can I text you later? Or just buying yourself time to where you can get out of that freeze mode and start thinking clearly instead of just freezing and then letting things happen to you, or freezing and then kind of going through the motions because you're just in shock and like you just don't know how to handle things differently. So that's been a big thing for me because most narcissists, it's been like inappropriate comments, it's been unwanted physical contact, it's been rage, starting to scream at me for no reason. And uh I you know like it's interesting in a way because if you can start to examine what are your default kind of defense modes that you go into, because we all go into different ones, we all have our preferred ones, and it's oftentimes very common for uh those of us that have gone through this, like, so my two top ones would be freeze and then friend and then forage, or what I call forage. So there's, I was like five. There's fight, flight, freeze, friend, um, and then I consider foraging one. So like foraging for food, foraging for stuff, shopping, eating, hoarding, those kinds of things. So for me, that's I don't shop because I'm not, thank God, because I am not into stuff, but I tend to start foraging. My car becomes a mess, my room becomes a mess, my space becomes a mess. Papers multiply. I don't even know where they come from. I think what I'm probably doing is I start, in an effort to try to clarify what's going on, I start writing things. My desktop on my computer becomes a mess. Um, I tend to eat and I don't realize, I know I mentioned this last live stream. I don't realize it. Like, it's not that I binge eat. It's just, but I'm only like 5'1" on a good day. So it doesn't take a whole lot for me to start really putting the weight on. So, 150 calories here, 300 calories there, it adds up. So, just I start munching on stuff, and it's like a nervous habit that I didn't realize that I had. So, yes, that's why I get knocked off balance, I panic, and then when I panic, I slip into one, maybe even all three of those different defense modes at like different times until that situation completely, not only the immediacy of that situation passes, but after I've almost like processed that whole thing. And so sometimes that can take years. And I'm in those modes for a long time. This was one of my big realizations from last week when I just hit this like emotional wall out of nowhere. It was real. I was really tempted. I was like, I was feeling like I might need to go to the hospital. Like, I was really emotionally very like, just discombobulated. And I was surprised by how disoriented And I was. Um, so it was a very eye-opening experience for me to have this happen. But the good thing is I learned a lot from that experience. And mainly I learned that I was had all of these kind of residual issues from these different experiences that I was still carrying around that I didn't realize that I was still carrying around. So, you know, it sucks that that's still the case, but it was a very powerful awareness, and so for that I'm thankful. So I guess, but from I guess for other people, like I was saying, to ask yourself, okay, how do you handle standing up to a person? Is it always here's the thing too. It's generally uncomfortable to set a boundary with somebody else. It can be uncomfortable to say no. It seriously takes a ton of practice and dealing with all of the guilt and feeling rude or mean. It takes a while to where it's just natural, where you just tell somebody, "Hey, I'd love to, but I can't," or, "No, that's not going to work for me," or, however you want to say no. It takes a while to kind of practice that, and it feels very unnatural and awful at first, but it does get easier over time. Yeah, Postmodern says fight, flight, freeze, fawn. And Pete Walker is the one that came up with um, at least the fawn one. I call it friend because I think that's just more clear. But in the friend one is more of that ingratiating, or the fawn one is more of that ingratiating type behavior. So where we're in a potentially, we're on the receiving end of a rage attack, or really outrageously inappropriate behavior, and we go into one of those defense modes, and we kind of slip into that fawn or that friend mode, where we become like overly compliant and helpful and ingratiating. Oh my goodness, and what can I just do for you? And oh my goodness, you poor thing. And just ho 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 ho, just trying, I just want to make everything okay for you. And it's interesting when we can see that that's a defense mechanism. And for me, when I go into that mode, my voice tends to get very high, and it just happens. And I become very kind of doting and ingratiating. Very interesting. Oh, that's a good one. Maria says, yes, I always went into leave mode when I needed to implement a boundary first. That's thriving for me. Yeah, I think that's so big to give ourselves like breathing room, and whatever that might be, buying yourself some time, getting, or just flat out leaving and giving yourself that space of knowing this does not work for me. I just need to get out of here. And so whether that means whatever that might mean for you in that situation, whether that means you go full no contact, where you decide at that point you're going to go low contact, so very limited contact, whether you're going to try to go gray rock from here on out, whether you're going to give yourself some time to kind of regroup and then figure out, okay, how am I going to address this and try to set a boundary, whatever that might look like for you at that time. But it's it, the more you practice it, and the more that you're aware of that you have options. I think so many of us just didn't realize that we had options. We were mistreated, and we felt like, well, I guess I just have to stay here because I'm married, or because you know they're my boss or whatever. And it just doesn't dawn on us that actually we can go find another job, we can get divorced, we can, just because you've been friends with that person since elementary school, if they're toxic to you, it doesn't mean that you need to keep that friendship going. Or just because they're a parent, if they're incredibly abusive or abusive at all, it doesn't mean that you need to keep them in your inner circle. Like, you can distance yourself to whatever degree that you want to, or you can set boundaries with them. Just because you're their child doesn't mean that you can't try to set boundaries. Oh, yes, I agree completely. Vegan Yogi says, yeah, abuse leaves you abusing yourself with harsh criticism and self-destruct until you become aware of it and shift your energy. I think that helps a lot too. Yes. Yes, absolutely. All that Kaz says, I love your accent, Dana. Do I have an accent? I don't think I have an accent. Uh, so does my daughter. We are both watching you on Google Cast. She thinks you should make relaxation videos. You could sell the relax CDs at the Rage Cafe as an antidote. Yes, I love it. We'll just have, it'll just be like the full circle. We can have rage and then zen and then tea and then relaxation. I love it. I love it, love it, love it. Here's another thing too, as far as emotions go, because for the people that are feeling kind of stuck in that numb zone, which is really common, to it can help to kind of provoke some different emotions within you. And a lot of people, I think probably men especially, struggle with getting in tune with sadness. And I think for a lot of, again, for a lot of men especially, anger, I think women are more socialized that it's okay. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to cry. It's okay to be hurt. And men, that conversation is not really had with men. It tends to be the exact opposite. Oh, you're a grown man. You needed to suck it up, stiff upper lip. Little boys are taught this. Oh, you're a big boy. You're a big brother. You need to, you're a man of the house. Boys don't cry, kind of a thing. And so when guys do experience the highs and lows of life, breakups, divorce, death, these kinds of things, these types of emotions are oftentimes very new for them. And so what can help, and I've encountered this same struggle with a lot of women too, where like I feel like I need to cry, but I just numb and I don't know how. Like I don't know how. Or I'm feeling like I want to be angry, but I don't know how. Like how do I get out of this numb stage? And so something that you can do is when you've got time, and I would encourage you to set time aside and make this part of self-care, is you can rent, well, I guess now people don't rent movies, right? Like you can go to Netflix and get a movie that is something that's sad, that's going to make you cry. Uh, you know, I think for me, when I was a kid, one of my favorite movies was Beaches with Bette Midler. And it's a story of this friendship. And I don't want to give it away, but it's just this really fantastic story. Barbara Hershey's in it. And I used to put that movie on. And it was so interesting because I didn't realize this when I was a kid, but I think that's why I was doing it, is because I needed to cry, but I needed a reason to cry because I had all this stuff going on in my life, but I couldn't tap into that emotion. That was like the easiest way for me to tap into that emotion. So I would watch this movie like every single weekend and I would cry and cry and cry and cry. And then I'd feel so much better. So that can be a good movie. Titanic. Maybe not. Maybe you might want to stay away from like love story ones. But any movie that Old Yeller, uh, that might kind of evoke within you those emotions of sadness, and letting yourself cry and realizing that it's okay. It's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength. Just being in tune with your emotions is a sign of strength. And if a person's struggling with anger, to try to allow yourself to feel that emotion, again, giving yourself time to be like, okay, I'm going to feel angry and then I'm going to get this out of my system. And so maybe that's going to like getting a playlist, creating a playlist of, really like, just really intense, like hardcore rap or heavy metal or music that really just evokes those feelings of, just rage inside of you. And then going on the treadmill and running it out, or lifting weights, or going into the backyard and throwing water balloons at the fence, or punching your pillow, or going in your car and screaming. And it's okay. I mean, the after effects of anything traumatic is going to leave a person with a wide range of emotions. It's it's not bad. It just means you're human. So it's okay for you to take time to work through those emotions. And sometimes I think we need to do it in a very physical way like that. I mean, journaling is great, but sometimes it really does feel good to just, you know, cry and cry and cry. Yeah, and that is huge. Agatha says, I cry more lately. I literally sit down and I am hurting. I feel I am strong enough to feel the hurt, but now I am hurting. I'm letting it go. I'm not fixing it and I'm not denying it. I think that's so powerful. I mean, that's just so huge. That's so yay. Yay you for that. And it's amazing how our bodies and brains work like this. You know, our brains, we have this traumatic event, and our brain spends all of this time trying to make sense of it and to process it. And that's a lot of what PTSD is. It's just if you think of your brain as kind of this supercomputer that's trying to analyze all of this data, but a lot of this data doesn't make sense because we don't fully understand what happened, or what like they're about, or what we did or didn't do, or there's just a lot of confusion there. So our brain is trying to make sense out of this problematic situation when it only has kind of limited data. And so it's on overdrive, and it can be, get really caught up in all of that. And we can get caught up in staying angry or staying numb, because it's hard for our brain to shift out of those gears until it kind of processes enough of that information to where we're safe enough that we can shift into like having other emotions. It's weird. Like, our brains are fascinating the way that they work. And so once we do start healing, then other emotions start surfacing, kind of when we have like the storage capacity, or the what would you call that? Like the energy capacity in our brain. It has the resources, I guess, to start processing other emotions. And so that's when these other emotions start surfacing. The grief or the sadness, or and everybody experiences different emotions at different points, and it's not a straight line. I mean, a person can go from anger to numbness to acceptance to um grief to back to acceptance, back to anger, back to acceptance. It's just kind of this loop. So it takes a while. It takes a while to process it. Harmony Jello says, I have so many playlists. LOL. Yeah. And James, yeah, says, one of my ex best friends called me a wussy for saying she's abusive. LOL. Yeah. And I'm sorry, that's not cool. And that's a lot of that kind of, I think, male mentality, right? Like, it's just this idea of they, I think women don't even understand abuse half the time, especially if it's not physical. If we see somebody that's in a relationship that's abusive, to us, it's like, oh, well, then that person must be being, physically abused. And it's so interesting and so weird how we tend to view this kind of stuff, because most people nowadays can identify it. Like, if we see bullying in kids, male or female, we as a society are now acknowledging that's incredibly damaging. We know it's a big deal. We know it's a problem. We know that bully kid is a jerk, and that kind of stuff can drive a person to suicide. Like, it's taken seriously, and it's not looked at as the target of abuse is not the target's not blamed for the bullying, right? Like people understand it in that context of, yeah, verbal and emotional abuse is very real and it's very painful and it has long lasting implications. And a lot of kids that are bullied in like elementary school carry that stuff around for decades if they ever get rid of it, you know? And um so it's weird that we can acknowledge it in this one context, but then in other contexts, like, oh, if you're actually dating the person and they were bullying you, basically, that you're somehow a wussy or that's somehow your fault or something else. It's just very strange to me how people don't they get it in one context, but then not in another. Mm. Arrow One says, I look at myself in the mirror and I feel like I'm looking at a useless being who's wasting space everywhere I walk. I think these things because my partner makes me feel like this. Well, I I would encourage you if you're in a relationship where you're feeling ground down and less than and that you have no value to that kind of extent that's not that's not the right relationship for you, you know, and that person's not a partner, that they're an emotional predator and that they're needing to kick you down and grind you down in order to make themselves feel better. It's adult bullying, you know, and it's very twisted and it's not your fault and you do have there is a lot right with you. You know, I don't even know you and like everybody has stuff that's good and right about them. And, you know, life is all about kind of you figuring that out. Like, what makes you, you? What makes Arrow Wand? Because only you can bring that forth. So, you know, you're not a waste of space. No, you know, the odds of a person being born are something like 1 in like 400 trillion. I mean, it's infinitesimal, you know, and the fact that you were born, just the fact that you made it to being a person is huge. It's so huge. And it's such a magical thing in and of itself, you know? And then the fact that you came into existence and have your own set of like gifts and talents and all of these things that just make you you. I mean, that's just, I don't know. I just get so tickled when I think about stuff that and how magical that is. You know, I mean, you think about it. Other animals don't have that. You know, they really don't. I mean, kind of a cat is a cat is a cat, and you know, a gopher is a gopher, and you know, a dolphin is a dolphin, and they don't really tend to have like super unique things about them. And that's what's so cool about people is people do. Like one person could be incredibly artistic. I have a friend who's fantastic at math, and I just and he's so good with like directions and like spatial relations, and he just understands the world in a completely different way than I do. And I could listen to him talk all day long because he just has such a different skill set with like physics and science and math, and that is not the way my brain operates at all, you know. So but it's just everybody's got their strengths and everybody's got their weaknesses, and it's kind of the journey through this life is to figure out what makes you you and then just to do more of that. So if he's telling you anything else, he's wrong. Tell him to back it up. Yes, that's right, James. James says, Arrow, there is nobody on earth just like you. Remember that. You are unique AF. So true. So true. Rick asks, Dana, I was 100% totally confident in myself. Now I don't have a clue who I am. How do I find myself again? Okay. I'm excited for you. Um, this is my favorite part for people is deciding that. And I think it's more of a I think it's part of a decision and then a kind of part of like a revelation. So, I talk about this all the time, but I'll just do a kind of a brief rundown. But a great way to start is by paying attention to how you feel and getting in tune with kind of your own emotional scale. We all have this, but we're oftentimes not aware of this. So if you think about things on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being things that really juice you, 5 is things that you're like lukewarm about, and 0 being ice cold. Like, you know, and to start ranking things on that emotional scale. So, for example, and it helps to start with things that you're not emotionally invested in. So, for example, these Pilot like gel pens, I stinking love these things. These are like a 9 or a 10 for me. Like, I really enjoy writing with them. A regular ballpoint pen would be like probably like a 2 or a 3. Like, I incredibly dislike that. This tea, yogi tea, Egyptian licorice tea, is phenomenal. It tastes like the Aveda tea, and it's by far, like, hands down my favorite. That's a 10, like, all day long. That is a gift from God, is that tea. That is so good. 10. This cup, I really like it. I like the size of it. I like the color of it. I like the handle placement. Like, I really like this cup. This would be like a 9 or a 10 for me. Um, I don't know. The cell phone case, by and large, it's magnetic. It clips into my wallet. I kind of I like the pattern. It's kind of falling apart, but I like it. This is probably like I would say a 7.5. So 8. I'll say 8. Um, so start asking yourself, where do certain things rank for you, and and then kind of move. So you can maybe start in your kitchen, and then you can move. I encourage people to move, then at some point make sure that you hit your closet with this, because that can be so insightful, to go through your clothes and to really get real about yourself with yourself. Like, how do I feel about this shirt or this tie or these pair of shoes, and why is it? Because do you like the color, the fit? um, do you like it because it makes you feel a certain way, or do you dislike it because it doesn't fit, you don't like the color, you don't like the way it makes you feel? Really getting in tune. Or I bought this suit because I felt like that's the kind of suit that I should have bought for this job that I felt I needed to have. You know what I mean? Like, and get included, and then asking yourself, if you have hobbies, what kind of hobbies really juice you? Or maybe they're hobbies that you've kind of outgrown, that you're like, you know what, I used to really like running, but lately I keep doing it because I've always done it, but now I've noticed that my knees really hurt and it's not that enjoyable. It's just something I've always done, and I've kind of been doing on autopilot. And then thinking, well, maybe I'll try biking instead, or yoga, or swimming, or what have you. And then see, like, okay, how does this make me feel? Does it make me feel energized? Does it, you know, do I like cycling classes? Like, just paying attention to how you feel. And then the whole goal is to live your life in that zone of like 9 and 10 as much as possible. Because here's the thing, and that might feel really almost, I don't want to say extravagant, but like, oh, kind of, who can live their life in a 9 or a 10 all the time? Like, impossible, I guess is the word. It can feel like a kind of an impossible thing to do. Like, well, Dana, I've got bills to pay. I've got a life. I can't just, do what I want. I can't just be happy. Like I have to suffer, right? I have to go to this job I hate and drive this car that I hate and do all these things I hate because that's what adults do. And it's not. That's another lie that we've all been sold. So there's things that you can still be an adult and do and enjoy along the way. So um yes, getting in tune with things and living in that zone of 9 and 10. And here's the thing too, is if you're so used to living in that zone of good enough, which is really like between probably a 5 and a 7 for most people. That's kind of that zone of complacency. That zone of complacency, it's a short-term solution. And I'll tell you, most people, when you're living in that zone and you don't know it, that's also the zone of complacency is also the zone of frustration because it's the zone of zero traction. You're continually starting over in relationships and friendships and careers, buying new clothes, buying a different car, because you can't quite scratch that itch, but you might not know why. But the reason why is you're not living in that zone. You're not shooting for those 9s and 10s. You're shooting for good enough. And that can be a real game changer when you realize it's sort of like buying a quality piece of clothes or shoes or what have you. Yes, it might cost more upfront for that thing, whatever that thing might be, a stereo, a car, or whatever, or shoes, but it's going to last longer and you're going to get so much more enjoyment out of it because it's a quality item. And because if you buy a pair of shoes, that's a 5 comfort wise or quality wise, you're going to be replacing those shoes a lot more often, and it's going to cost you more, and it's going to cost you more money and more time than it would have had you just spent a little bit more and gotten something of quality. It's that delayed gratification to actually get what you want is really what it is. That's what that looks like in motion. So I hope that helps. Yes, totally. Truth seeker, I agree. It says, I like the thought of life opening up naturally by following the trail of good vibes on everything. Yes. I don't know if you were here in the first part of the live stream, but we were talking about that and kind of following more of those emotions of just, yeah, on that zone of like good vibes, like what gives you good energy. Do more of that. Follow that. And like I'd mentioned before, I think there's one caveat to that that's really important is Joseph Campbell used to say, follow your bliss. But I think it's very important to realize to follow your bliss, but not at the extent of following your peace. So it's important that we follow what feels good, but not if we don't have peace about it. That means that there's something off, that our gut instinct is kicking in, and those are some breaks. But if something truly feels good, short term and long term, then we should feel bliss and we should feel peace. So it's getting those things in alignment. That can be quite the undertaking. Okay, let me scroll up here. I hope I say her name correctly. Naja asked, hey Dana, have you read the book The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk? Yes, I have. It's a fantastic book. We read that for book club, I think last year. That would be a good book worth discussing. I think we read the book for book club, but we never discussed it. I just did notes on it. Okay, let me scroll up here. Oh, that's an interesting thing. Yeah, Missouri Cowboy says, I wonder if TV or binge watching is a product of freeze, fear, fight, fawn, or forage. I think it can definitely be an escape, kind of a flight defense at times. I think anything in excess, I think it's more of, our relationship to the thing that can be the issue. So, sort of like with an alcoholic, it's not so much like the number of drinks. It's not like if a person has, 4 drinks a night, they are fine, but if they have 5 drinks a night, they've got a problem. Like, it's not so black and white. It's more of the it's the relationship a person has to the thing. It's a relationship to alcohol. So it's a relationship to food. It's a relationship to TV. It's a relationship to money, or to sex, or to any of these things where that's the problem. Excessive use can definitely be a huge indicator that yes, there is a problem. If a person's spending too much money, engaging in a lot of like casual promiscuous sex, those kinds of things, drinking too much to the point where they're getting in an accident or a DUI or those kinds of things, big red flags. But that's kind of the fire that we can't deny, but the problem has been going for quite a while. So, and they continue. That's the tricky thing with things like food and money and sex and other things that people do on a fairly regular basis, or use on a fairly regular basis, is it can be really hard to tell if this is a problem versus like, alcohol or drugs. Like, a person can stop those. But here's the other thing too, with even with alcohol or drugs, is there's that saying, addictions tend to run in threes. And I think probably because coping mechanisms tend, well, I was gonna say they tend to run in probably in multiples as well, but like, our brain is a very clever thing. And so if we get rid of what it was using to cope with something, it's going to offer up something else. It's going to need some other way to handle that. And so if we're not able to handle that issue head on, if we're not able to effectively deal with it, and it can be incredibly painful to really dig deep, it's going to start coming out in other ways. So it's really common for people to gamble and drink and smoke, or what have you. So it's just very rarely as simple as like, oh, there's just that one thing. Like, it's generally the tip of the iceberg. But yeah, I mean, for me, TV stuff is a great way for me to put my brain on autopilot. So if I need a break, uh, I will like binge watch a series on Netflix. But I don't watch TV on a regular. I don't watch TV. I guess I just kind of watch Netflix or YouTube videos. But if I'm needing to kind of escape from something or just give myself a break, I'll watch an extreme amount of like YouTube videos or what have you. But it's just interesting. It's interesting to think about, like, why are you doing what you're doing? Why am I doing what I'm doing? To 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 think, what's the deeper reason for this? Uh, and speaking of TV shows, I heard Black Mirror, the next episode or season is going to be out. I think, what is it, December 29th? So if I have any fellow Black Mirror fans, yay for that. Missouri Cowboy saying, yep, I'm using TV to an excess to escape reality. An occasional comedy, for example, can be very helpful in resetting one's mood. It's a useful tool. I abuse the tool. Yeah. And it's easy to do, you know? It's easy to do. There's a lot. I quit watching TV by accident. A while. Oh God, it's probably been what, like close to 10, gosh, 10 years maybe. When, yeah, okay, not quite that long, maybe 8. Been about 8 years, I guess. When towards the tail end of my marriage, I was married to a guy in the military. We moved around all the time. And the last move, it was kind of just what finally just broke everything, broke the marriage, broke me. It was just awful. Was he was overseas and we got orders to move. And so when we were moving to Las Vegas, and I had packed up, well, the movers had packed everything up and we were going to buy a house in Las Vegas. And then it was like the real estate market was a mess down there and the house was in foreclosure. And anyways, long story short, we were trying to buy this house and there was a delay with closing that went on for, I was like 4.5 months. So I was couch hopping with my car full of stuff, thinking that I was going to go. I kept being told, and I had 2 dogs with me, kept being told that the house was going to close like that Monday or then that Wednesday and then that Friday. And I'd quit my job. I was like, savings were being depleted. I was staying with friends, but all of our friends were military. And then they started, because we were all in the same rotation, they started moving. And then very quickly, it was like I had nobody. And, um, and my marriage was falling apart this whole time. And everybody, we were both incredibly stressed. It was just awful, 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 awful. And, um, yes. So during that time, I didn't have a TV. And it was we had a rental property that was vacant at the time. And so it was had I don't think it had any furniture in it at that time. I think we are trying to do it as a long-term rental. So I was like sleeping on the floor. I mean, it was just ridiculous. Like we had nothing. I didn't, and I was so concerned because I'm like, what am I gonna do with myself? You know, it didn't have, I think I had a computer. I think I had a laptop, but this was kind of before YouTube and was really a thing. It was just, oh, it was but it broke me of watching TV, and I never really went back after that. I just um, kind of do other things. Well, now the internet, I mean, YouTube and Facebook, and there's so many other things that can kind of keep you occupied, but uh, I just kind of got used to the silence and used to doing other things. And I really don't miss it. If anything, that's probably one of the better things that's ever happened to me, because I didn't realize how negatively impacted I was by TV shows. And I used to watch, my favorite show back then was Law and Order. I used to watch, I probably have seen every episode of every season ever created. Like I've seen so much Law and Order, but I didn't realize how much that violence stuck with me, even though those shows aren't terribly violent, but still, like they're always about a murder, you know? And that was very interesting to realize, like, man, I'm really bothered. So when my husband did come back from his deployment, we moved into this house, we had the TV on and stuff, and he was watching TV again. It was just that realization of, I this really is bothers me. It's loud, and then the lights and the how fast the pictures move. I was just I felt like Rip Van Winkle. It was the weirdest thing. So yeah, I don't miss it. Yeah, totally. Truth Seeker says, I love food porn and learning about weird subcultures. I am all about food stuff too. My latest show, we went on this. So my friend, the math guy that I was telling you about, he's dating another good friend of mine. And they are both big foodies. And so whenever we hang out, like they always want to watch like cooking shows and stuff like that. And they got me started on that Britain's Best Baking Show. And so we watched all of the episodes for that. And now we've moved on to the Canada's Best Baking Show. And I like love that show. I'm not normally a cooking show person, but it's just so interesting to see how they can make the same recipe and how different it all turns out. And I don't know, it's just it's very motivating. That makes me want to cook and bake and do things like that. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up here. Shannon. Yes, Shannon says, I want to talk to y'all and I can type fast, but I'm like not knowing how all this really works yet. Yes, the chat can be quite the thing. It's like fast moving water. What you can do if you're wanting to answer somebody directly, what can help is like what Maria has been doing here is doing the @ sign. And so then doing @ sign and then their name. And so then as they're reading the chat, then they'll know that you're talking to them or answering them or what have you. So yeah, that can help. Yeah, it's interesting. Somebody was saying the other day that um there's a huge difference between like watching these live streams and then being a part of them. And I would agree completely. Like I've been a part of other YouTubers live streams and it's just a totally different experience when you're there live and talking to other people and just kind of the side conversations that happen, and it's it's different. If you guys, if you can ever get a chance, it's just something totally different to try to experience being on a live stream, whether it's mine or somebody else's or whatever. It's just kind of fun. The way technology is changing. It's just so interesting. Really? Peace Modern says, I got stuck on like the 3rd episode of the 1st season of Black Mirror. Trying to think, what was the 3rd episode? Some of the episodes were kind of hit and miss, like no lie. But they were, I don't know, some of them were really, really good. Very well done. Just kind of the dystopian society that technology could take us, or maybe kind of is taking us to. Just kind of creepy. Truth Seeker says, I've been watching Anthony Bourdain's Parts Unknown and Lisa Ling. Yeah, those are 2 other really great shows. I used to really enjoy, what was his name? Steve. Oh, he was so cute. What was his name? He just, and I think he still does, like traveled all over. I want to say Steve Jobs, but that's not him. I can't remember. He just, I don't know, talk about a guy like really finding his stride. He just seemed to so love what he did and love to travel around. That's gonna really bug me. What is his name? But he would travel around and go to these shows, and he was so enthusiastic. No, not Orwin. Although I really liked him too. He was such a cool guy. Rick Steves. That's it. That's it. Yes, Rick Steves. Thank you, Music, Fashion, and Passion. Yeah, I think that would be fun. Here's what I would love to do is, because I did a study abroad when I was in college. I did a study abroad in Italy, in Florence. And it was, I think really it was more of to like escape my life than it was like to do the study abroad. And I didn't know, I had no Italian language. Didn't research the area at all. Like I just kind of rolled up into Florence and just didn't know. Like I don't know. I just didn't know what I didn't know what to expect, like didn't know how to prepare, I guess, for that. And Italy is such an amazing place. There's so much history, especially if you know you're from the United States. Like we don't have anything old here. If the oldest stuff we have is, you know, a couple hundred years old. And it's especially if you're in the Midwest. I guess there's probably people in like Boston and, you know, Vermont and kind of those areas that are used, Massachusetts, like used to more historical things. But for the most part, the United States, you know, we don't have that. So it just was a very amazing experience. And I kept wishing, I'm like, man, I would really appreciate this so much more had I read a few books on like art history and researched the paintings and kind of or the different types of architecture, like what made this, you know, why is this painting in a museum versus it's just a good painting? Like, 'cause there's always so much, you know, backstory to all these things. And we had this one tour guide for what was it? St. Peter's. Yeah, St. Peter's Basilica. And he was totally just like my kind of tour guide, like super geeked out about all of the like the backstory to things, you know, like the size of the different marble sculptures and if they because that cathedral is huge and how if they were, you know, they don't look that massive, but when you think about the scale, like how tall that cathedral is, then you realize, oh my God, yeah, these things are like 40 feet tall. I mean, they're just massive, or 20 feet tall, or however. Or there's different markers, like little fun facts, like there's different markers inside St. Peter's that show the placement of if you were to take all of the other like largest cathedrals in the world and put it inside there, that's how big they would be in relation to St. Peter's. So I always thought it would be so fun to really dig deep and find out all kinds of stuff like that and then go to places and film it. 'Cause I think so oftentimes when we do travel, we don't know the backstory. And so we can only appreciate things on kind of like a surface level of like, yeah, this is a really great marble sculpture. Like you don't know why, or, you know, I don't know. Maybe something else I will do one of these days. Let's see. Sable says, if you're Italian, Dana, you sure have an English last name. Although I realize it could be from marriage. Yes, that is my mother's last name. So I switched names. My father is full Italian or Sicilian. Both of his parents are from Palermo. But yeah, it's and then my grandfather, I think it was my grandfather was adopted. So don't really know a whole lot about her side of the family. Even like adopted parent wise, or even like his biological parents. I don't know. Strange. Bonnie says, I am a caregiver to my elderly mother. It's hard to make self-care a priority in that type of circumstance. You know, um, I would encourage you that it's imperative that you make self-care a priority in that because you are in that type of circumstance. And this is coming from a place my grandmother had Alzheimer's. She lived with us when I was a teenager. My mother took care of her. I was a caregiver and a nurse, caregiver for many, many years, and then a teacher and then a nurse, and have, you know, done that. And it can be so physically exhausting and emotionally draining. And it's hard to get a break and to not feel guilty about that, you know? or even if her needs are so extreme that like for example, with my grandmother that had Alzheimer's, it was full care. Like we had to feed her, we had to change her, we had to bathe her, we had to, she was in a wheelchair. It was extreme needs and extreme care. And um, it can be it can be a lot. But I would strongly encourage you to really make it a point to carve out time for you, even if it's in 10 or 15-minute increments. A good cup of tea or coffee or a glass of wine, or um, some night and as a quick bath, or um, giving yourself 15 minutes to just read, or the guided imagery kind of stuff at night. It's huge. It's huge. And it really is so important. Maria asks, "Hey Dana, how did you make friends after the time you had no one?" So yeah, so Steve had just moved here with me to Michigan, and I I literally like knew no one. It was a new state. I didn't even know where the grocery store was. I didn't have a job, and I was looking for a job. It was incredibly stressful. Um, Meetup.com. I love that website. I still love that website. It's fantastic. There's meetups all over the world, and for pretty much anything that you can think of, there's generally a meetup for it. So I always encourage people, join like a dozen or 2 dozen, even if you're like, oh, that one's too far away, or I don't know if that really appeals to me. It's okay. Like you don't have to go to any meetups, but the more you join, the more you get notified of different ones. And then you have the option of going to them if you want. So at least it leaves that door open. And it's a fantastic way. Like my 2 friends I was talking about, Darren and Danielle, I met them at a meetup, a food meetup, in fact. And I'm not really even a foodie. I'm like a wannabe foodie. I eat and I appreciate good food, but you know, like I, they are true foodies. So, but it was a lot of fun. And I've met, surprisingly, and I'm so glad I joined that group. I would not have normally done that because, like I said, I'm not a foodie. So I just kind of thought, well, they try different restaurants, and that seems fun because I tend to have my routine of like where I eat and that's it. And that it just sounded like a lot of fun. And I met quite a few people through there that were that I still hang out with and that I enjoy being around. So that was really huge. And um I don't know. There's just it's fun. It's just and it's a great way to get out there and try new things. And even if you have friends, even if you know what have you, and it's not for dating. I mean, some of the groups are, some of them are like singles, I don't know, 20 somethings, 30 somethings, 40 somethings, or some of the groups are for like single parents, or some of the groups are for play dates or people that have dogs, or outdoor adventure, or spirituality. Like seriously, you name it. Like there's probably a meetup for it. And if there's not, then you can always start your own. And there's a cost to it, but I don't think it's huge. So yeah, I would I would really look into that. Yeah, and Agatha says, yes, join a gym that has classes. I met 2 of my best friends in a Zumba class. Yes, I love it. Ooh, that'd be fun. Stephanie says we could get a group discount if we all go on a trip, like a cruise. Yeah, that would be fun. I would be up for. I've never been on a cruise. I don't know how I feel about cruises. Like they kind of freak me out. I think it's being in it's like we're from a claustrophobia. Like the thought of being on even though it's like a big boat, you're just out in the middle of nowhere and like the rooms are small. I don't know if I'd like that, but I don't know. I'd be open to trying it. I think it'd be fun. If we could go to like the Virgin Islands or someplace would be great. Um, okay. Let's see here. Okay, going, scrolling. Oh, Stacy's asking, she says, I have a client I put to bed that has Alzheimer's. He's in the early stages. Well, dementia, actually. Same thing, I think. It's very similar. Dementia tends to be like the early stages of it. Like so, a lot of people that, yeah, a lot of similarity between the two. Both are just it's incredibly tragic to watch a person go through that. Truth Seeker says, do gentle, I'm guessing you probably mean respectful. Like, do respectful alpha men exist or are they manicorns? I think they're difficult to find. Probably more on the manicorn list. But I will say, though, that I think a true, I think what happens is I think there are a lot of guys out there that are just ridiculous and they just have no class, they have no manners, they're just kind of like your stereotypical like narcissist, just arrogant, brash, conceited, that kind of stuff. No emotional maturity, and they consider themselves to be like alpha, or we might even consider them to be alpha. But frankly, I think a true alpha male is one. Well, frankly, I don't really even believe in the concept of alpha and beta and all of that. It really depends more on like the context, because a person could be totally alpha in one context and not in another. But um, a guy could have a lot of those character. I think a true leader is doesn't need all the machismo around it. Like they kind of just their presence, they know how to lead people, they know how to guide people, and they can do it in a respectful way. Anybody can can be dominant in with force. To me, that doesn't require any special skill set. Like that's kind of it's easy, right? But it takes true skill in order to kind of be a leader but lead with like like inner strength, not physical strength, if that makes sense. But yes, I think those kinds of guys can be difficult to find. And women, I think those kinds of women can be difficult to find too. Yeah, Bear says alpha male is a myth. Yep, I agree. Oh, SP says the problem is a lot of women don't want respectful men. We get called nerdy. I got called that tonight by a girl I took out. Yeah, that's not cool. Um, I don't know. I think a lot of women do want respectful. I will tell you, I think one of the biggest mistakes, if you could call it that I think why a lot of guys tend to fall into the friend zone is, and women do the same thing, but I think women that do, okay, so women that do what I'm going to talk about tend to more easily get involved with like abusive men. But when guys have this behavior trait, it either lands them with abusive women or it lands them in the friend zone. Um, and that is being very quick to kind of allowing that other person to become your whole world. So I think a lot of like quote unquote nice guys, they are so thoughtful and they're very quick to just to be whatever that girl needs. Like, I'll be there, we can go on a date. They'll just let you, like, you can just have as much of your time as you want. And there's a lot to be said, I think, psychologically for kind of this attitude of oh, I guess kind of scarcity, of like basically like letting somebody know that, hey, I value my emotions, I value my time, and kind of having more things going on than just that other person. And so, like, if you're going to go out with a girl, to to fully realize your self-worth and value your emotions, value your time, like, hey, I'd love to take you out. And it I don't know, like, it's a weird thing, like, you can take her out on a shorter date and then make sure that you're kind of ending it. If she doesn't end it first, you're being like, okay, I only have like an hour or two, whatever, however long tonight, and I must get going. It's just weird. I think there's just something psychologically, like, if a person, it's sort of like, if it feels like the fish is jumping into the boat, then everybody's going to be real like suspect of like what's wrong with that fish. And it's kind of the same thing with dating. Like, it's just a weird psychological thing. It's the same thing with women. Like, if you're on a date, I think it can make a person seem more desirable if you've got to go, or if you're on the phone or texting and you hold your boundaries and you're like, okay, well, I've got to go to bed, or I've got things to do, or I've got, and that's why I encourage people, build up this life that you have. Because if you let somebody else know, like, I value myself, I have a life that I love, and you've got to kind of, like, we're going to take this at the pace I'm going to take it at, and I need to make sure that this is something that I want. People are like, oh wow, this person really values themselves, like, I want to be in that, like, I want to have that in my life too. And so it makes them kind of up their game when they realize, like, oh wow, this person isn't just like lonely or bored. If they're spending time with me, it's because that they really want to spend time with me. So, okay. Yep. True Seeker says, I used to fall for the love bombing jerks. I didn't realize they were jerks, of course, and just nice guys didn't approach. Yeah. And I think I was the same way. And I think the I misconstrued love bombing as nice guys. Because my type that I tend to attract is very like altruistic, so like altruistic sociopaths. So they come across as really fantastic. They volunteer, they, oftentimes they're spiritual, they seem like really insightful, amazing men, and they live a double life and they're just full of drama and deceit. So, and totally fine with like destroying anybody in their process, in their path. So that tends to be my type. Um, but yeah, and I think too, the older you get, the more you're aware of kind of what's healthy and what's a problem, then kind of what you're attracted to changes. Suddenly the guys that, I don't know, things are just so different when you're an adult. Like, they're so different in an older adult, like so things are so different when you're in your 20s versus when you're in your 40s. And um, the qualities that I looked for then, that I was attracted to then, I'm not even remotely attracted to now. Like for me now, uh, well, I guess I was attracted to this then too, but it's definitely more so now. Now it's more intelligence, it's conversation, it's hobbies, it's how a person spends their free time, how they are with animals. Um, do I enjoy their company is kind of what it boils down to. Are they easy to be around? Is huge. And frankly, I think that's what a lot of women are looking for, is just a cool person to hang out with. I think a lot of guys think that women are concerned about their hairline and what kind of job they have or how much money they have. And I will tell you, personally and with other women that I've talked to, that really isn't a thing. Like it's not even in my top 10 most important things, like at all, especially hair. I have a thing for bald guys. So it's, you know, totally not, hairline is not an issue at all for me. But like it's, I think men tend to think that, but really, I think most women are looking for a guy that listens to them and, um, who who can have fun. I think having fun is a big thing, especially as you get older. Somebody who's fun. And I think a lot of people that are, especially if they're older, tend to date at they're lonely or they don't know how to date. And so they just kind of go to dinner and a movie. Like going to a movie is probably like the worst date things because you don't get to know each other. You're just sitting there watching a movie and then it's just awkward. So doing like fun things like going to an escape room or um, I don't know, bowling or putt-putt golf or those kinds of things. Things that kind of show you more about who they are and like their character and how they handle losing and winning and all of that stuff. Yeah, Karen says, yep, character, integrity, honesty, and a sense of fun are important to me now. Debbie says, yes, bald is beautiful. Yes, it is. I think Bruce Willis all day long. I think he is so sexy. Let's see. Scrolling up, scrolling up. That's huge. Yeah. Little Miss says, yeah, love bombing gives me the creeps now. Finally, I am healed. And Vegan Yogi says, Dana, it's so funny that you mentioned this. I used to be attracted to successful, intelligent men. Now I'm looking for grounded, passionate, and humble. Yeah. Yeah, for me at this stage in my life, it's, can I spend time with this person? Like I want to be able to enjoy who I'm with. And it's anybody, like is this enjoyable is kind of what it boils down to, whether it's a job or friends or a significant other. I think that's so important. People talk all the time. Like it's so important that you're really, that true love is like friendship on fire. And I agree completely with that. But I think where a lot of people get tripped up is that word, even that concept of friendship is often so thrown around that people mistake a person being friendly with being a true friend. And a true friendship is a state of mutual trust and support. It's the foundation of any friendship and any relationship. If that's not there, then it's dysfunctional. Like it's not going to sustain a person long term. Like that has to be there, that sense of mutual trust and support. So, it's I see so many people and I used to get caught up in it too, where like their exes or toxic people, especially if you're dating a person, would be like, well, but we can still be friends. And it's like, no, actually, and I used to be okay with stuff like that. I used to think, well, okay, I don't want to be rude. They want to be friends. I mean, I guess there were a lot of like, good things about it. Maybe we just didn't make a good couple, kind of a thing. We can give friendship a shot. But I didn't realize what like friendship really was. It was sort of like, well, this person is funny and they're really interesting, but the reason it wasn't working is because it was one-sided, and it was me giving and them taking, and there wasn't that sense of mutual trust and support. I mean, I couldn't rely on them for anything because they lied and manipulated, and it was all about them. So I think kind of once I realized that definition of like what is a friendship, then my friendships really began changing. They began getting a lot healthier because I was able to separate the difference between just a person being friendly versus what actually constitutes being a friend. Yeah, Benjamin was saying he doesn't want to date for a while, and that's very normal. Oh, you did, Adrian. Well, congratulations. He says, I moved to Washington with my girlfriend, Dana. We wish you a Merry Christmas. Well, thank you so much. I saw you on Instagram the other day, and I was like, I have not seen him around in forever. So good. I'm glad. I hope you like Washington and that you like your girlfriend too. So I hope you guys have a fantastic holiday. So thank you. Thanks for popping in. It's so fun. It's just so fun. I love running into people around on the internet. That never gets old. Oh, people are talking about balding guys. Yeah, I like I said, I have a thing. I think a lot of the men I've dated have been bald, and that like starting in like my early like mid 20s and stuff. I don't know. It that must be traumatic to start losing your hair, you know? I guess that we just kind of think that it just happened. I guess because it doesn't happen to us. It's sort of like, oh, it just guys go bald. I guess it happens to some women, but for men, it's probably, obviously probably a lot more traumatic for the guy that's going bald than for other people. Like it just doesn't, I don't know. I think bald guys are cute. So like it doesn't, I, I prefer it personally. Yeah, Little Miss says, yeah, it does happen to women. It does. It's just, I think any change like that to a person's physical appearance that they don't have control over like that has got to be traumatic. Okay. Agata's got to go to bed. Good night. She said, this was great. It was fun to join tonight. Thanks, and a great space. Thank you for being so welcoming, everyone. Unfortunately, I need to go. Good night, everyone. Lots of love. Okay. Good night. Yes. And oh my goodness, it has almost been 3 hours. So we should do our wrap up and kind of guided imagery relaxation thing. Oh, let me take a sip of tea and we can do that. So, if you have a chance and if you're wanting to take this time to kind of just get grounded and get relaxed, find a spot that is comfortable, whether that's sitting down or laying down or what have you. Get comfortable. Let's take some deep breaths here. So go ahead and take a deep breath in through your nose. Feeling that breath travel down into your stomach, filling up your stomach and your lungs. And exhaling slowly through your mouth. And inhaling again through your nose, filling up your stomach and your lungs, letting them expand, feeling your chest open and rise with each breath, and exhaling through your mouth. And inhaling again through your nose. And this time, with this breath, see how far down you can send it. If you can send it past your stomach, kind of into your solar plexus, into like your kind of your hips, into down into like your quad muscles. How far down can you send that breath? And with each exhale, letting go of all of the day's tension, stress, worries, responsibilities, pressure, anything that's on your mind. Realizing that now is the time that you can just let all of that go. And when we're done, you can decide if you want to pick any of that up again, or you can just let it stay gone. Just release it into the universe. So go ahead and take another deep breath in through your nose, sending it as far down as you can into your lungs, your diaphragm, your stomach. As far down as you can, letting it just fill up as much of your body as you can. And exhaling all of the worry, tension, stress, responsibility. You are here. You are in this moment. In this moment, there is nothing else that is calling to you. This is your time for self-care. And this is important. You have value. Your emotions have value. Your time has value. This is you taking care of you. Now bring your attention to your forehead. Let's slowly start releasing all of that tension and the stress from the different muscles in your head and in your face. Starting with your forehead, relaxing your eyes. Noticing if you've been keeping your eyes kind of pinched or squeezed shut, just letting them relax. Relaxing your cheeks and your jaw. Go ahead and let your jaw hang open. Release your tongue from the roof of your mouth. Let your face Just relax, letting all of that tension and stress just evaporate off of you. And moving your attention down into your throat, into your shoulders, making sure to keep that jaw released and relaxed, letting the muscles on the side of your throat relax as you let your jaw fall open and you keep the tongue off of the roof of your mouth, just letting your mouth fall open. It's okay. Releasing your shoulders, letting them fall a few inches maybe, relaxing them, letting your chest fall open, knowing that you are safe, that you are here in this moment. Relaxing your arms and your hands and letting them fall in whichever way might be comfortable for you. Continuing to breathe. Every breath, allowing yourself to become more and more relaxed. Exhaling all of the tension, stress, worry, and responsibility. Bringing your attention to your back, letting your back muscles relax, letting your side relax, and your pelvic area and your hips just relax. Letting your legs just kind of flop whichever way is most comfortable for them to flop. Feeling how it feels when your muscles are relaxed. Your hands are limp, your arms are limp. Letting your legs just kind of turn into spaghetti noodles and relax. Letting your knees, your calves, and your feet relax. Letting your toes relax. Paying attention, kind of scanning your body and seeing, are you holding any tension anywhere in your body? And if so, to bring the next few breaths to that area. And it can help to envision that tension as a color, whatever color first pops to mind. And you can imagine yourself as you're taking those breaths and bringing them to that area. Those breaths are helping to relax the tension in that area. And with each breath, that area becomes loosened up, more and more relaxed. And once it's become more relaxed, imagine yourself taking your hand and scooping out all of that color, all of that tension, kind of putting it out in front of you. And make sure to get all of it so you can see, because it's that certain color. Scoop it out and make sure you got it all, because that stuff can hide. So scoop it out and bring it in front of you. Now bring another breath to that area and focus on it being relaxed without that tension there. And now that there's this little area of colored tension in front of you, imagine that it turns this most magnificent silver white color, and that it just kind of dissipates like a beautiful light, just going back out into the world. And now imagine that same silver light deep inside you, perhaps like in your heart area. And it might start off as kind of like a flickering of a flame, just a small light, kind of in that darkness that is our inner body. It's beautiful, sparkling, clean, pure, silver light. That is your light. That is your essence. And with each breath, making that light larger and more vibrant. And allowing that light to grow bigger and brighter inside of you. Feel it as it expands. It wants to just expand so quickly and so freely. It's exactly where it's supposed to be. And it's so excited that you finally discovered it. Let it glow, let it grow as it expands into your shoulders and your neck, up into your head, down into your lungs, your diaphragm, your stomach, swirling and splashing and moving as it just dances around every single cell in your body, instantly and perfectly just repairing every single cell, all of your DNA, all of your mitochondria, everything that it's touching, it's repairing it. It's joyfully, playfully splashing through your body. It's magnificent. Feel it as it's swirling down your hips, into your legs, your knees, your calves, your feet, to each toe. Feel it as it moves down your arms, into each finger. Feel it as that light starts to move outside of your body, as it expands through the top of your head, connecting you to this greater energetic force that you might know as God or Source, or kind of the great energy, the great spirit, whatever, by whatever name you connect to that great energetic force out there, the universe, what have you. That you are connected to all of that positive energy, that you are a force for good, and that you are healing in every day, every way. Even if it might not feel like it, you still are. Every moment of every minute of every hour of every day, you are healing. Feel that light as it starts now to rise up higher and higher above your head. And possibly as it expands out of your sides, out of your fingers, through your arms. It's not scary. It's beautiful. It's a reminder that you are part of everything, that you have this amazing energetic presence. And feel that energy as it flows down your legs, into your feet, down into the earth, down, 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 grounding you deeply, letting you know that you are connected, that you are grounded. And once you can feel that energy and how connected you are to the earth and to everyone else out in the earth, and let's take a few moments. Let's do 10 breaths. And during that time, we'll send that amazing healing energy, loving, kind, good energy to anyone right now that you feel that might need it. Whether it's people that you saw on the news, people that you chatted with in the live stream, possibly people that you came across in a support group, maybe even people that you came across in the comment section on YouTube somewhere. Sending them some of this healing energy, sending them this light and love, giving them a really large energetic hug, letting them know that they have this light inside of them too, and that they matter. And when you're ready, come on back. And when you come back to yourself, make sure to give yourself a very big, energetic hug, because you are as deserving as your love and attention and compassion as anyone else. You matter. You matter. You matter. You are worthy of love. You are worthy of being treated with love. And when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes. So thank you so much, Doug. He says, have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, all. Thank you for all you do, Dana. Thank you for such a generous donation. And it's my pleasure. I love being able to do this. So thank you. And I hope that you have a wonderful Christmas and a Happy New Year as well. Scott says, thank you for your support. Don't think I could keep it going like you do and keep it positive. So many risks of it being negative, but it's always uplifting. Keep it up. Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. I think it's been one of the bigger aha moments that I've had lately, is realizing that there's so much emotion, intense emotion, appropriately intense emotion of like anger and rage and all of that behind this, when a person has gone through really anything traumatic, especially narcissistic abuse. And that it can be really, I think, important and healing to have a place that that it is more calm and kind of more of a healing thing. So I'm glad. And I'm glad that this channel's kind of turned into that. So so thank you. Thank you guys so much. And I hope you guys have a oh, really? Amethyst says, Dana, this is the first time I have meditated in my life. No wonder you keep looking younger and brighter. You are glowing. I just glowed too. See you next week. Thank you, Dana. Yeah, doesn't it feel great to just be in your body and to kind of connect with everything that's good and right in the world? And, the cool thing with that is that you can do that at any time. So, yeah, it's like magic. It's awesome. So, you guys, thank you so much. And I will see you next week. So, have a fantastic week. Okay. Lots of love to you guys. You are not alone. You are not crazy. And you really can move forward and heal from this. So, take care and have a fantastic week. Good night.